My sister gave me $80,000 for my 64th birthday. She said it was for my home renovation, so I could live with dignity in my remaining years. That same night, I woke up to voices in the living room and discovered my son and daughter-in-law had already divided my money between them. Half for their new apartment, half for a trip to Europe. I heard every word from the dark hallway, my heart breaking in silence. I walked into the living room and said only 3 words. My daughter-in-law turned pale, sitting on the sofa, and whispered in a trembling voice, "Honey, what are we going to do now?" But it was too late. I had learned, after 64 years, that silence can also be a weapon, and that night, silence saved me. My name is Eleanor Hayes. I am 64 years old, and I live alone in a house I no longer recognize as my own. The walls are stained with damp, the roof leaks when it rains, and the kitchen smells faintly of old gas every time I light the stove. This house was my home for 30 years. I raised my son, Marcus, here. I buried my husband here. I kept every memory worth keeping here. But now, this house is just a cold shell that reminds me of everything I've lost. Marcus lives in the city, 2 hours away. He's 42, has a stable job in tech, and a wife named Jasmine, who always looks at me as if I were a piece of old furniture cluttering up her perfect life. They come to visit once a month, if that. They arrive in their new SUV, stay for 2 hours drinking coffee at my wobbly kitchen table, and leave before it gets dark. Marcus kisses my forehead and tells me to take care of myself. Jasmine smiles with tightly pressed lips and checks her phone while I talk. I don't ask them for anything. I've never asked them for anything. I learned a long time ago that begging for love from people who don't want to give it is just humiliating yourself for no reason. So I keep quiet, make the coffee that Jasmine likes, and see them off at the door with a smile I no longer feel. When they leave, the house fills up again with that heavy silence that has been my companion since I was widowed. A silence that smells like loneliness and tastes like being forgotten. My sister Margaret is different. She's 68 and has lived in California for 20 years. She left after her divorce, looking for a new life, far from painful memories. She built a small tailoring shop and over the years managed to save enough to live comfortably. Margaret was always the strong one between us, the one who made decisions without fear, the one who never let anyone walk all over her. I was always the quiet one, the one who endured, the one who sacrificed everything to keep the peace. Margaret called me 3 weeks before my birthday. Her voice sounded excited, almost childlike. "Eleanor, I'm coming to visit you. I have a surprise for you, something you've needed for a long time." I told her she didn't have to, not to bother, that I was fine. But Margaret insisted. "You're turning 64, sis, and I want to be there with you. I want to give you something that gives you back a little of what life has taken from you." When Margaret arrived, the house filled with an energy I had forgotten. She brought fresh flowers, a chocolate cake she bought at the best bakery in town, and a bottle of wine we saved for dinner. That night, sitting in my small living room, surrounded by old walls and worn-out furniture, Margaret took my hands and looked at me with those clear eyes that always had more courage than mine. "Eleanor, you've lived your whole life giving to others, to your husband, to your son, to this house. And now look at you. You live in a place that's falling apart, alone, without anyone valuing you as you deserve. I saved this money for years, working day and night, and I want you to use it for yourself, to fix this house, so you can live with dignity." Margaret pulled a white envelope from her purse. It was thick, heavy. She placed it on the table carefully, as if it were sacred. "There are $80,000 in here, Eleanor. It's yours. Fix this house. Make it yours again. Make it a place where you want to wake up every morning." I was paralyzed. $80,000. It was a fortune. It was more money than I had ever seen in my entire life. I felt tears welling up uncontrollably, burning my eyes. "Margaret, I can't accept this. It's too much. It's your money, your hard work." But she shook her head, squeezing my hands tightly. "It's my gift to you, sis, and I'm not taking no for an answer. Promise me you'll use it. Promise me you'll take care of yourself for once in your life." That night, after Margaret went to sleep in the guest room, I stayed awake, staring at that white envelope under the yellow lamplight. $80,000. I could fix the roof, change the pipes, paint the walls, buy new furniture. I could transform this house back into a home. For the first time in years, I felt something like hope. The next day, Marcus and Jasmine arrived unannounced. They said they wanted to wish me a happy birthday, even though it was still 2 days away. Margaret greeted them politely, but I noticed the tension in her gaze. She had never fully trusted Marcus. She always said he had inherited his father's coldness, that ability to put his own interests above everything else. During lunch, Margaret casually mentioned that she had given me a gift for the house renovation. Marcus looked up from his plate, interested. "That's great, Mom. This house needs a lot of repairs. It must be expensive to fix all this." Jasmine nodded, with that calculating smile I knew so well. "Yes, Eleanor. If you need help managing the money or hiring the contractors, we can help you. We don't want you to get scammed." Margaret gave me a sideways glance, as if warning me about something, but I just smiled and changed the subject. I didn't want to ruin the day with suspicions. I didn't want to believe that my own son could have bad intentions. That evening, Margaret returned to California. She hugged me tightly at the door, whispering in my ear, "Guard that money, Eleanor. Don't tell anyone how much it is. And if you need anything, call me." I nodded, not fully understanding why she was saying it. Margaret was always more suspicious than I was, more prepared for betrayal. I hid the envelope in my room, inside an old box I kept under the bed. $80,000 in cash, waiting to give me the life I deserved. I went to bed that night with a peace I hadn't felt in years. Tomorrow, I would start planning the renovation. Tomorrow, everything would start to change. But then I woke up. It was 2 a.m. The house was dark and silent, but there were voices. Voices coming from the living room. I froze in bed, my heart beating so loud I could hear it in my ears. The voices came from the living room, low but clear in the dead of night. I recognized Marcus's voice immediately, and then Jasmine's, whispering something I couldn't quite make out. I sat up slowly in bed, trying not to make a sound. The wooden floorboards creaked under my bare feet as I stood up. I walked to my bedroom door, which I had left ajar, and carefully peeked into the dark hallway. The living room light was on. I could see the shadows of Marcus and Jasmine projected on the hallway wall. They were speaking in low tones, but just loud enough for me to hear every word if I got closer. My first instinct was to call out to them, to ask what they were doing awake at this hour. But something in their voices stopped me. There was an urgency, a contained excitement that made me feel they were discussing something they didn't want me to know. I moved down the hallway, pressing myself against the wall, barefoot and silent. The hallway was dark, and I moved like a ghost in my own home. When I reached the entrance to the living room, I stood still, hidden in the shadows, and listened. $80,000. Marcus. 80,000. It was Jasmine speaking, her voice filled with barely contained excitement. "Your aunt gave her $80,000 in cash. Do you realize what that means?" Marcus replied with a low, almost nervous laugh. "I know. It's a fortune. Mom has never had that much money in her life. She doesn't even know what to do with it." "Exactly." Jasmine sounded impatient now. "She's going to waste it on this old house. She'll hire contractors who will charge her double what any repair is worth. She'll end up with nothing, Marcus. And here we are, struggling to pull together the down payment for our apartment." I felt something break inside me, a sharp pain, as if a knife had been plunged into my chest. I leaned against the wall, closing my eyes, trying to control my breathing. It couldn't be true. They couldn't be talking about my money. The money Margaret had given me with so much love. "We can't just ask her for it, Jasmine." Marcus sounded cautious. "She's stubborn. If we ask for money directly, she'll say no. You know her. That's why we're not going to ask her directly." Jasmine was speaking in that calculating voice I had heard so many times. "We're going to offer her help. We'll tell her we can manage the money for her, that we can hire the workers, supervise the project, that it's too much for her to handle alone. And once we have access to the money, we just take what we need. Half for the apartment down payment, half for our trip to Europe. She'll never know how much the repairs really cost. And if she asks for the invoices?" Marcus sounded doubtful. "We'll show her fake invoices. I know people who can do that. Marcus, think about it. With $40,000, we can buy the apartment we want. With the other 40,000, we can take that trip we've been dreaming of. And your mom still gets her house fixed up, just not as fancy as she planned. Everybody wins. There was a silence. A long, heavy silence. And then I heard the voice of my son, my only son, the boy I raised with my own hands, say, "Okay, we'll do it. Tomorrow we'll tell her we want to help." The world stopped. Everything turned cold, dark, and real. I braced myself against the wall with both hands, feeling my legs tremble. I wanted to scream, to run into the living room, to confront them, but something held me back. A voice inside me, old and wise, said, "Wait, not yet. You need to think." I backed away from the hallway with the same silence I had arrived with. I returned to my room, closed the door without a sound, and sat on the bed. Tears streamed down my cheeks unchecked. They weren't just tears of sadness. They were tears of rage, of disappointment, of humiliation. My own son, my own blood, planning to steal from me, planning to use my love, my trust, to take away the one thing that had given me hope. I spent the rest of the night awake, staring at the ceiling, thinking. I remembered every moment of Marcus's life, the years I spent caring for him as a child, the sleepless nights when he was sick, the sacrifices I made to give him a good education. I remembered how his father died when Marcus was 19, and how I worked 3 jobs so he could finish college. I remembered every hug, every "I love you, Mom," every promise that he would always be there for me. And now this betrayal, this coldness. How had I raised a man capable of stealing from his own mother? When dawn broke, I had already made a decision. I wasn't going to confront them yet. I wasn't going to let them know I had heard everything. I was going to wait. I was going to watch, and when the right moment came, I was going to act, but with intelligence, with coldness, with the same calculation they had used against me. Marcus and Jasmine came out of their room around 8 in the morning. I was already in the kitchen, making coffee, with a smile on my face. A smile that made the muscles in my face ache, because it was completely fake. "Good morning," I said cheerfully. "Did you sleep well?" Marcus kissed my forehead. "Great, Mom. Thanks." Jasmine smiled at me with that perfect smile that I now knew was just a mask. "The coffee smells delicious, Eleanor." We sat down for breakfast. I served them toast with butter, fresh fruit, and orange juice. Everything I had in my humble kitchen. And as we ate, Marcus said exactly what I knew he was going to say. "Mom, Jasmine and I were talking about the money Aunt Margaret gave you." He paused, as if choosing his words carefully. "It's a lot of money, and fixing this house is going to be complicated. You have to find reliable workers, get quotes, supervise the project. It's a lot for you to handle alone." Jasmine nodded, placing her hand on mine with false tenderness. "We want to help you, Eleanor. Marcus and I can take care of everything. Find the best workers, negotiate the prices, make sure you don't get scammed. You would just have to give us the money, and we'll make sure your house turns out perfect." I looked at both of them, my son and my daughter-in-law, 2 people I had welcomed into my home, whom I had fed, whom I had given all my love. And now they were sitting at my table, lying to my face with an ease that chilled me to the bone. "That's very generous of you," I said softly. "But I don't want to be a burden. I know you're busy with your jobs, with your plans." "It's not a burden, Mom." Marcus sounded insistent now. "We want to do it. In fact, we insist. You're my mother. It's my responsibility to take care of you." I felt a bitter laugh rise in my throat, but I suppressed it. "Let me think about it," I said finally. "It's an important decision. I need time to think." I saw the frustration flash across Jasmine's face, just for a second, before she smiled again. "Of course, Eleanor. Take your time. We just want what's best for you." That afternoon, after Marcus and Jasmine left, I sat in the living room and cried. I cried for everything I had lost, for the innocence of believing my son loved me unconditionally, for the loneliness of knowing I was completely alone in this world. I cried until I had no tears left. And then I dried my eyes, stood up, and went to my room. I took the white envelope from under the bed and counted the money. $80,000. Every bill represented hours of my sister Margaret's work, years of sacrifice, true love, and I was not going to let anyone take it from me. The next day I called Margaret. It was 9 in the morning, and I knew she'd be awake, getting ready to go to her tailoring shop. When she answered, her voice was cheerful, full of energy. "Eleanor, sis, what a surprise. How are you? Have you already started planning the renovation?" My voice was trembling, but I tried to control it. "Margaret, I need to tell you something. Something that happened last night." And then I told her everything. Every word I had heard in the early morning, the plan Marcus and Jasmine had, the coldness with which they had decided to rob me. As I spoke, I felt the tears returning, but this time they weren't just tears of pain. They were tears of contained rage. Margaret was silent for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was filled with a cold fury I had never heard from her. "That son of yours, that damn son of yours. I always knew there was something about him I didn't like. That coldness he's had since he was a kid, but I never thought he'd go this far. I don't know what to do, Margaret. They're my family. He's my son. Listen to me carefully, Eleanor." Margaret's voice was firm now, with no room for doubt. "That money is yours. I worked 20 years to save it. I did it for you, so you could have a dignified life. Not so a pair of thieves could steal it. And if you're not going to defend yourself, then I'm going to defend you. What do you want me to do? First, that money cannot stay in your house. Marcus and Jasmine could come back at any time and look for it. You need to put it in a safe place. Go to the bank today and open an account in your name. Only your name. Deposit every cent. And don't tell anyone, do you hear me? No one. But if Marcus asks about the money, you tell him you already deposited it, that it's in the bank, and that only you have access to the account, that it's for security. If he insists on helping you with the renovation, you tell him you're going to hire the workers directly, that you appreciate his offer, but you want to do it your way. Be firm, Eleanor. For once in your life, stand up for what is yours." That afternoon, I went to the local bank branch. It was a small building, with only 3 tellers and a manager who knew everyone. I felt nervous, carrying that envelope full of bills in my old purse. Every step I took down the street, I felt like someone was watching me, that someone knew what I was carrying. The manager, a man of about 50, named Mr. Thompson, greeted me with a professional smile. "Mrs. Hayes, what a pleasure to see you. How can I help you?" "I want to open a savings account," I said, trying to sound more confident than I felt, "and make a deposit." "Of course. What amount did you wish to deposit?" I took the envelope out of my purse and put it on his desk. $80,000. I saw Mr. Thompson's eyes widen in surprise. "That's a considerable amount, Mrs. Hayes. Where did this money come from, if you don't mind me asking?" "It's a gift from my sister. She lives in California. She gave it to me to fix my house." Mr. Thompson nodded, regaining his professional composure. "I understand. Well, let's get this processed. I'll need you to fill out some forms. And I would recommend you consider an account that only you can manage. With no additional authorizations. It's safer." That's exactly what I want. I spent the next hour filling out papers, signing documents, answering questions. When we finished, Mr. Thompson handed me a new passbook with my name printed on the cover and the opening balance. $80,000. "Your money is safe here, Mrs. Hayes. Only you can make withdrawals or transfers. No one else has access to this account." I left the bank with the passbook tucked into my purse and a strange feeling in my chest. It was relief mixed with sadness. Relief because the money was safe, sadness because I had to protect it from my own son. That night, Marcus called me. "Mom, Jasmine and I were thinking. Have you decided about the renovation? We want to start looking for workers as soon as possible." I took a deep breath before answering. "Marcus, I really appreciate your offer, but I've decided that I'm going to handle the renovation myself. I already went to the bank and deposited the money. It's in an account in my name. I'm going to hire the workers on my own." There was a silence on the other end of the line. A silence that felt far too long. "Mom, I don't understand. Why don't you want our help? We just want to help you." "I know, son, but it's something I need to do for myself. I hope you understand." Another pause. "Fine, Mom, if that's what you want." His voice was cold now, distant. "We'll call you later." He hung up without saying goodbye. I stared at the phone in my hand, feeling that emptiness that disappointment leaves behind. But at the same time, I felt something else, something I hadn't felt in years. Power, control over my own life. The following days were strange. Marcus didn't call again. Neither did Jasmine. It was as if they had disappeared from my life. I spent my hours alone in my house, planning the renovation, contacting workers, getting quotes. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was building something for myself. Something no one could take away. One afternoon, while I was reviewing quotes at the kitchen table, someone knocked on the door. It was Ruth Miller, my lifelong neighbor. A 72-year-old woman, with perfectly white hair and a smile that lit up any room. "Eleanor, I brought you some coffee cake I made this morning. I thought you might like some company while you eat." Ruth had been my friend since I moved into this house. She had been with me when my husband died, when Marcus left home, through every difficult moment of my life. She was one of the few people in the world I trusted completely. We sat in the kitchen, eating coffee cake and drinking tea. Ruth looked at me with those wise eyes that seemed to see beyond words. "Eleanor, you look different, sadder. What happened?" And then I told her everything. I couldn't hold it in. The words came out like a flooding river. I told her about Margaret's gift, about the conversation I'd overheard, about Marcus and Jasmine's plan, about the decision to protect my money. As I spoke, Ruth listened in silence, nodding from time to time, with an expression that mixed sadness and understanding. When I finished, Ruth took my hands in hers. They were wrinkled hands, covered in age spots, but strong. "Dear, I am so sorry you're going through this. No one should be betrayed by their own blood. But you did the right thing protecting your money. You are stronger than you think." "I don't feel strong, Ruth. I feel broken." "Being broken doesn't mean you're weak. It means you've lived long enough for life to hit you. And yet, you're still here, standing, making decisions, defending what's yours. That is strength, Eleanor. True strength." Her words hit me deeply. Ruth was right. I had spent my entire life being soft, being accommodating, trying to keep the peace. And that had only resulted in people walking all over me. Now it was time to be different. To be the woman Margaret wanted me to be. The woman I needed to be. "Thank you, Ruth," I said, squeezing her hands. "You don't know how much I needed to hear that." She smiled. "Now listen to me. That son of yours is going to come back. When he realizes he can't manipulate you, he's going to try another strategy. It might be anger, it might be guilt, it might be playing the victim. Be ready, and don't you dare give in. Not 1 inch." That night, lying in my bed, I thought about Ruth's words. Marcus was going to come back. That was certain, and I needed to be ready. I needed a plan, not just to protect my money, but to protect my dignity. To let him know that his mother was not the weak woman he thought she was. 1 week passed, then 2. Marcus's silence grew heavier. I continued with my renovation plans. I had hired a contractor recommended by Ruth, an honest man who gave me a fair and detailed estimate. The repairs would begin in a month. It was in the 3rd week that Marcus finally showed up. It was a Sunday afternoon, and I was in the yard watering the few plants that still survived in the dry soil. I heard the sound of his car's engine before I saw him. My heart sped up, but I forced myself to stay calm. I knew this moment would come. I had been preparing for it. Marcus got out of the car with a forced smile. He was alone. Jasmine wasn't with him. "Hi, Mom. I brought you some things from the grocery store. Thought you might need them." He was carrying 2 paper bags full of groceries. Milk, bread, fruit, some canned goods. Things I hadn't asked for. "Thank you, son. You didn't have to bother." My voice was calm, but inside I was wound as tight as a spring. I put down the hose and helped him carry the bags into the kitchen. Marcus looked around the house with evaluating eyes, as if he were calculating something. "The house looks the same as always," he said, setting the bags on the table. "I thought you would have started the renovation by now. The work starts next month. I'm waiting for the contractor to finish another project he's on. He's a highly recommended man." Marcus nodded, but I could see the tension in his jaw. "Mom, we need to talk. About the money. About your decision to do everything alone." This was it. The moment I had been waiting for. I sat down in one of the kitchen chairs and looked him directly in the eye. "What do you want to talk about, Marcus?" He ran his hand through his hair, a nervous gesture he'd had since he was a boy. "Look, I know you were offended when Jasmine and I offered to help, but you have to understand, we're just worried about you. You're my mother. I don't want you to get ripped off or scammed by shady people. I'm worried about myself too, son. That's why I took the necessary precautions. But you don't understand. Mom, $80,000 is a lot of money. You've never handled amounts like that. You could make mistakes. You could trust the wrong people." I felt the anger rising in my throat, but I kept it under control. "Marcus, I've lived 64 years. I've raised a son. I've managed a household. I've survived your father's death. I think I'm capable of hiring workers to fix my own house. I'm not saying you're not capable. I'm just saying it would be easier if you let us help. Jasmine and I know people. We can get you better prices. I already got good prices, Marcus. And I've already made my decision." I watched his face change. The mask of concerned son was beginning to crack. "Why are you being so stubborn about this? It's like you don't trust me." Those words hit me like a slap. The irony was so cruel it almost made me laugh. He, who had planned to rob me, was accusing me of not trusting him. "It's not a matter of trust, Marcus. It's a matter of me wanting to handle my own affairs." "Your own affairs?" Marcus stood up from his chair, pacing the kitchen. "Mom, that money could be used for a lot of things, not just for fixing up this old house." "What do you mean?" He stopped, looking at me with an expression that tried to be casual, but I could see was calculated. "Well, you could invest some of that money. Put it into something that gives you a return. Or you could help your family. Jasmine and I are trying to buy an apartment. A loan from you would help us a lot with the down payment." There it was. He had finally dropped the mask. It was no longer about helping me. It was about taking my money. "Marcus, that money is a gift my sister gave me for a specific purpose. To fix my house. That's what I'm going to do with it. But Mom, think about it. If you help us with the apartment, we could visit you more often. You could come stay with us. You wouldn't have to be so alone." Every word was a carefully constructed manipulation, promising me company in exchange for money. As if my love, my presence, my value as a mother only existed if I gave them what they wanted. "I'm not alone, Marcus. I have my neighbors. I have my friends. And if you wanted to visit me more often, you would do it without me needing to buy you an apartment." His face hardened. "I can't believe how selfish you're being. I'm asking you for help, Mom. I'm your son, and you're turning your back on me." "Selfish." I repeated the word slowly, letting its poison settle in the air between us. "I'm selfish because I want to use the money my sister gave me for the purpose she gave it to me. But you're not selfish for asking me to give you $40,000 for an apartment." I didn't say $40,000. No. I stared at him, and for a moment I considered telling him I had heard him that night, that I knew exactly how much he planned to take. But something stopped me. It wasn't the time. Marcus threw his hands up in a gesture of surrender. "Forget it. I see you've already made your decision, and nothing I say is going to change it. But I want you to know that this hurts me, Mom. It hurts that you don't trust me. It hurts that you prefer strangers over your own family." He headed for the door. I stayed seated in the kitchen, not moving. "Marcus," I said before he left, "I will always love you. You're my son. But that doesn't mean I'm going to let you make decisions for me or tell me how to use my money." He stopped in the doorway, without turning to look at me. "Goodbye, Mom." His voice was cold, distant, and then he was gone. I heard his car engine start, the sound of the tires on the gravel, and then silence. I stayed in the kitchen for a long time after he left. The grocery bags were still on the table. I looked at them as if they were evidence of a crime. Poisoned gifts. Little bribes to soften my heart. I put them away in the pantry mechanically, not thinking, just moving my hands. That night I called Margaret. I told her about Marcus's visit, about his attempt at manipulation, about how he'd finally admitted he wanted the money for his apartment. Margaret listened in silence, and when I finished, her voice was full of pride. "You did well, Eleanor. Very well. You didn't give in. You didn't let yourself be manipulated. I'm proud of you." I don't feel strong, Margaret. I just feel tired. I know, sis. I know. But this will pass. And when it does, you're going to have your renovated house, your dignity intact, and the certainty that you did the right thing. 2 days later, Jasmine appeared at my door. She came alone, dressed in casual but elegant clothes, with her hair perfectly styled and flawless makeup. She wore a sweet smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Eleanor, may I come in? I'd like to talk to you." I let her in, although every instinct in my body told me to send her away. We sat in the living room, the same space where weeks ago she and Marcus had planned to rob me while I slept. "Do you want some coffee?" I asked out of politeness. "No, thank you. I'm not staying long." She settled on the sofa, crossing her legs with studied elegance. "I came because I'm worried about Marcus. He's been very sad since he spoke with you. He feels like you rejected him." "I didn't reject Marcus. I rejected his attempt to control my money." Jasmine sighed, as if she were dealing with a stubborn child. "Eleanor, I know that sometimes Marcus can be insistent, but he only wants what's best for you. We both want what's best for you. The best for me, or the best for you?" She blinked, surprised by my directness. "I don't know what you mean." "Jasmine, I'm not stupid. I know exactly what you and Marcus want, and you're not going to get it." I watched her face change. The fake sweetness vanished, replaced by something harder, more real. "Look, Eleanor, let's be honest. You have $80,000 that you don't need to spend all on this house. This house is old. It doesn't matter how much money you pour into it, it's always going to be old. Wouldn't it be better to use that money to help your family? To secure your son's future? My son's future is not my responsibility. Marcus is 42 years old. He has a job. He has savings. If he wants an apartment, let him buy it with his own money. It's unbelievable." Jasmine stood up from the sofa, her composure finally breaking. "You're his mother. Mothers are supposed to help their children, but you'd rather spend a fortune on walls and roofs than help your own blood." I stood up as well, facing her. For the first time in my life, I felt I wasn't going to back down. "Jasmine, I helped my son his entire life. I worked 3 jobs so he could go to college. I gave him everything I had. And when he married you, I opened my home to you. I welcomed you with love. But that was never enough for you, was it? You always wanted more. Don't be ridiculous. We never asked you for anything. You didn't have to ask. I gave everything voluntarily. But now that I have something that is mine, something my sister gave me out of love, you two think you have the right to take it." Jasmine looked at me with eyes full of contempt. A contempt that had probably always been there, hidden behind fake smiles and kind words. "You know what, Eleanor? Do whatever you want with your money. Waste it on this house that's falling to pieces. But don't come crying later when you're alone and need help, because Marcus and I won't be there for you anymore. If your love depends on my money, then you were never there for me in the first place." Jasmine grabbed her purse and walked to the door. Before leaving, she turned and looked at me coldly. "You're going to regret this. You're going to grow old alone in this house, with no one to take care of you, no one to visit you. And then you'll understand that you rejected the only people who cared about you. I would rather be alone than surrounded by people who only want me for my money." The door slammed shut with a sharp crack. I stood in the middle of the living room, trembling. Not from fear, but from a strange mix of relief and pain. I had finally said everything I needed to say. I had finally defended what was mine. But the price of that truth was high. I had just lost my son. Or maybe, I realized with a wave of sadness, I had never really had him at all. That afternoon, Ruth came to visit. She must have seen something in my face because she immediately hugged me. "What happened, dear?" I told her about the visits from Marcus and Jasmine, about the manipulations, the attempts to make me feel guilty, the veiled threats. Ruth listened to it all with a serious expression, nodding occasionally. When I finished, she took my hands. "Eleanor, what you just did takes enormous courage. Most mothers can't stand up to their children. They feel they must give everything, always, no matter how they're treated. But you set a boundary, and that's good, that's healthy. Then why does it hurt so much? Because you love your son. And it hurts to love someone who disappoints you. But the pain doesn't mean you did something wrong. It just means you're human. The following days were strangely quiet. Marcus didn't call, neither did Jasmine. It was as if they had completely vanished from my life. I continued with my renovation plans. The contractor, a man named Mr. Davis, came by to take final measurements and confirm the start dates. He was a man in his 50s, with calloused hands and an honesty that was evident in every word he spoke. "Mrs. Hayes, this house has good bones," he told me as he inspected the walls. "With the right repairs, it can easily last another 50 years. It's going to be beautiful." His words filled me with a hope I hadn't felt in a long time. This house, my house, was going to be reborn, and I with it. It was a week later when I received a call I wasn't expecting. It was from an unknown number. When I answered, a woman's voice I didn't recognize said, "Mrs. Eleanor Hayes?" "Yes, this is she." "Good morning. I'm calling from the law office of Warren and Associates. I understand you are the mother of Mr. Marcus Smith." My heart sped up. "Yes, I am. Did something happen?" "Don't be alarmed, ma'am. Your son is fine, but he asked me to contact you on his behalf. He wants to speak with you about a legal matter related to a property." "What property?" "I would prefer you speak directly with your son about the details. Would you be available for a meeting next Tuesday at 10 in the morning at our offices?" A chill ran down my spine. What is this really about? The woman paused. "Ma'am, your son is considering filing an application to be appointed as administrator of your assets. He alleges concern about your capacity to manage your finances appropriately." The world stopped. I couldn't breathe. Marcus was trying to take control of my money legally. He was trying to have me declared incompetent. "I'm not going to any meeting," I said, my voice trembling, "and my son has no right to my money or my properties." "I understand your position, ma'am, but I would strongly recommend you seek your own legal counsel. If your son proceeds with this application, you are going to need representation." I hung up the phone with shaking hands. I sat down in the nearest chair, feeling like my legs wouldn't hold me. Marcus had gone further than I had ever imagined. He didn't just want my money. He wanted to take away my independence, my dignity, my right to make decisions about my own life. I called Margaret immediately. When I told her what had happened, she exploded. "That bastard, that son of a bitch. Excuse my language, Eleanor, but I can't find other words. How dare he do something like that? I don't know what to do, Margaret. Can he really do that? Can he take control of my money? Not if you fight. Eleanor, you are 64 years old. You are in full possession of your mental faculties. You have friends, neighbors, who can testify that you are perfectly capable. But you need a lawyer. A good lawyer. I don't know any lawyers." "I do. I have a friend here who handles these kinds of cases. His name is Arthur Warren. He's good, he's honest, and he isn't afraid of anyone. I'm going to talk to him today. You don't worry. We are not going to let Marcus do this to you." I couldn't sleep that night. I lay awake thinking about how I had gotten to this point. My own son, the person I had raised with all my love, was now trying to destroy me legally. When had he become this person? Or had he always been this way, and I had just been too blind to see it? The next day, Margaret called me with good news. "I spoke with Arthur. He can represent you. He's going to come see you the day after tomorrow. In the meantime, I need you to do something important. Get written testimonials from your neighbors, your friends, anyone who can confirm that you are perfectly fine mentally and physically, that you manage your house, that you make sensible decisions, that there is no reason for anyone else to control your assets." I spent the next 2 days talking to my neighbors. Ruth was the first to help. She wrote a detailed letter describing how I maintained my home, how I cared for my garden, how I made responsible decisions about my life. "Eleanor Hayes is a woman of full mental faculties," she wrote. "She is independent, capable, and does not need anyone to make decisions for her." Other neighbors did the same. Mary Serrano, who lived 3 houses down. Fabiana Padilla, who had known me for 20 years. Even the local grocer, Manuel Rivas, wrote a letter confirming that I handled my shopping and my accounts without any problem. When Arthur Warren arrived at my house, I was surprised. He was a man in his 60s, with gray hair and a calm but firm presence. He sat in my living room and listened to me tell the whole story from the beginning. He didn't interrupt me once. When I finished, he nodded slowly. "Mrs. Hayes, what your son is attempting is called a declaration of incapacity or a conservatorship. It's a legal process designed to protect people who truly cannot make decisions for themselves. People with advanced dementia, severe mental illness, things like that. But you clearly do not fall into any of those categories. So you can stop him? I can, and I will. We are going to file a detailed legal response. We have testimonials from your neighbors. We have proof that you are managing your finances responsibly. We have evidence that you made the intelligent decision to protect your money in the bank. No judge is going to declare a woman who is acting with such common sense incompetent." I felt an enormous weight lift from my shoulders. "Thank you, Mr. Warren. Call me Arthur, please. And there's something else I want you to know. If your son proceeds with this, we are going to countersue. For harassment, for attempted fraud, for emotional abuse. We are going to make sure he understands that he cannot play games with you like this." The next few days were a mixture of anxiety and determination. Arthur worked on my case with a dedication that moved me. He explained every step of the legal process, every document we prepared, every strategy we planned to use. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel alone in this battle. One afternoon, as Arthur was reviewing papers at my dining room table, he asked me something that took me by surprise. "Eleanor, did you ever suspect your son was capable of something like this? Were there signs before?" I thought about it. I remembered moments over the years. Small things that I had ignored at the time. Like when Marcus was 18 and asked to borrow money for a college project, money he never paid back. Or when he turned 25 and convinced me to put his name on the deed to the house, just in case something happens to you, Mom, although Margaret later advised me to remove it. Or the way he always calculated how much money I had, how much I spent, as if my finances were his business. There were signs, I admitted finally. But I didn't want to see them. A mother never wants to believe her son is capable of hurting her. Arthur nodded with understanding. "It's natural. But now, you have to see the reality. Your son isn't going to stop. If we block this incapacity application, he'll try something else. People like this don't give up easily. What else could he do? He could try to claim you're being manipulated by your sister. He could look for witnesses to say negative things about you. He could even try to prove the house is unsafe for you to live in alone. We have to be prepared for everything." His words scared me, but they also strengthened me. If Marcus wanted a war, I was ready to give him a battle. I was no longer the submissive mother I had been all my life. Now, I was a woman defending what was hers. That night, I received a call from a number I didn't recognize. I hesitated before answering, but finally I did. "Hello? Mom, it's me." It was Marcus. His voice sounded tense, forced. "We need to talk." "We have nothing to talk about, Marcus. I've already said everything I have to say to your lawyer. Please, Mom, give me 5 minutes. Just 5 minutes." Something in his tone made me hesitate. "Fine. 5 minutes." There was a long silence. I could hear his breathing on the other end of the line. "Mom, I didn't want things to get to this. I really didn't, but you left me no choice." "I left you no choice?" "Marcus, you're the one trying to declare me incompetent. Because I'm worried about you. That money is too much for you to handle alone. You could make mistakes. You could get scammed. I just want to protect you. Protect me." The words sounded hollow, false. "Marcus, I know. I heard you that night. The night after my birthday. I heard every word you and Jasmine said. I know you plan to divide my money between you. Half for your down payment, half for your trip. Don't pretend this is for my own good." Absolute silence. Then, a bitter laugh. "So you heard us? Well, no point in lying then. Yes, Mom, yes, we thought that money could help us. And what's wrong with that? I'm your son. I'm your only family. When you die, that money is going to be mine anyway. Why not use it now, when we really need it?" His words hit me like stones. "When I die. So you're just waiting for me to die to take what's mine. Don't be ridiculous. I'm just being practical. You're 64 years old, Mom. How many more years do you have left? 10? 15 if you're lucky? That money could change my life now, but you'd rather waste it on a house you probably won't even get to enjoy. I felt the tears start to run down my cheeks, but my voice remained firm. Marcus, right now, you are digging your own grave. Every word you say can and will be used against you. My lawyer is going to hear about this conversation. What? Are you recording this? I wasn't. But I let him think I was. Say goodbye to any chance of seeing a cent of my money, Marcus. Say goodbye to any inheritance. After this, you have nothing. Damn it, Mom. You were always so dramatic. Look, we can fix this. I'll drop the application. You give me $30,000. Just 30. And we all go on with our lives. No one has to fight. No one has to go to court. No. 20,000 then. Please, Mom, I need that money. The apartment. If we don't make the down payment this month, we lose it. You should have thought of that before you planned to steal from me. I wasn't going to steal. I was going to borrow. Without my permission. Without telling me. That's called theft, Marcus. And I'm not giving you 1 cent. His voice changed then. It turned cold. Poisonous. You're going to regret this, Mom. I swear to you. You're going to end up alone, sick, with no one to take care of you. And you're going to remember this moment and wish you had been more generous with me. If your love depends on my financial generosity, then you never loved me. Goodbye, Marcus. I hung up the phone and sat in the darkness of my living room. Marcus's words echoed in my head like funeral bells. How many more years do you have left? He was waiting for me to die, his own mother, and all he cared about was the money he might inherit. I called Arthur immediately and told him about the conversation. He listened in silence and then said, "Eleanor, I need you to write down everything you remember from that conversation. Every word. Even though we didn't record it, your testimony is valid. And it clearly shows your son's true intentions." I spent the next few hours writing down every detail, every cruel word, every admission, every veiled threat. When I finished, I had 3 pages filled with the most painful truth I had ever faced in my life. 2 days later, I received an official summons. Marcus had formally proceeded with his application to be declared the administrator of my assets. The hearing would be in 3 weeks. Arthur came to my house that same afternoon with a folder full of documents. "We have everything we need," he told me confidently. "Testimonials from neighbors, medical records proving you are in perfect mental health, bank records showing you are managing your money responsibly. And now we have your testimony about that phone call. We are going to win this, Eleanor. And what if we don't win? What if the judge decides in Marcus's favor? It won't happen. Trust me. I've seen cases like this before. Judges can identify when someone is abusing the legal system for their own gain. And that is exactly what Marcus is doing. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to have that confidence. But the fear was like a snake coiled in my stomach, squeezing tighter and tighter. What if I lost? What if Marcus gained control of my money? What if I spent the rest of my life unable to make my own decisions? Ruth came to visit me that night. She brought a pot of homemade chicken soup, knowing I hadn't been eating well. We sat in the kitchen, and I told her about the application, the hearing, the fear that was eating me up inside. "Eleanor, look at me," Ruth said, taking my face in her hands. "You are going to come out of this victorious. I know it. I feel it in my bones. That son of yours made the mistake of underestimating you. He thought you were weak, that he could manipulate you, but you have shown him he was wrong. I don't feel strong, Ruth. Strength isn't about not being afraid. Strength is about moving forward in spite of the fear. And that is exactly what you are doing." The next few weeks were the longest of my life. Arthur prepared me for the hearing, asking me difficult questions, making sure I knew what to expect. "Marcus is going to try to paint you as a confused, easily manipulated woman," he explained. "He'll say Margaret convinced you to hide the money in the bank. He'll say you're making irrational decisions. You have to stay calm, answer clearly. Show the judge that you are perfectly capable." The night before the hearing, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake in my bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the night sounds of the house, the creaking of old wood, the wind rattling gently against the windows. The same sounds I had heard for 30 years. This house was mine. My life was mine. And tomorrow, I would have to defend it in front of a judge, in front of strange lawyers, in front of my own son, who looked at me as if I were just an obstacle in his path to money. I got up before dawn. I took a hot shower, letting the steam fill the small bathroom. I dressed in the most formal suit I owned, a black one I had bought for my husband's funeral years ago. I combed my hair carefully, pulling it back into a simple bun. I looked at myself in the mirror and barely recognized myself. The woman looking back at me had tired but determined eyes. She had wrinkles that told stories of pain and survival. She was not the weak woman Marcus thought she was. Arthur arrived at 8 o'clock sharp. He was accompanied by a young woman named Claire, another lawyer from his firm. Claire is going to help us with the neighbors' testimonies, he explained as we walked to his car. Everything is going to be fine, Eleanor. Remember, stay calm, answer honestly, and show your truth. The courthouse was an old building in the center of town. We entered through heavy wooden doors that creaked as they opened. The hallway smelled of old documents and disinfectant. My shoes echoed against the marble floor. Each step brought me closer to the moment I had been dreading. When we entered the courtroom, I saw him. Marcus was sitting on the other side of the room with his lawyer, a young man in a gray suit who was reviewing papers with a serious expression. Marcus didn't look at me when I came in. He kept his gaze fixed on the table in front of him, his jaw tight. Jasmine was not with him. It was probably a strategic decision by his lawyer. An ambitious wife wouldn't help him look like a concerned son. The judge entered, and we all rose. He was a man of about 70, with completely white hair and gold-rimmed glasses. He sat behind his elevated desk and looked at us all with a neutral expression. Good morning. We are here to review the application of Mr. Marcus Smith to be appointed as administrator of the assets of his mother, Mrs. Eleanor Hayes, based on allegations of mental incapacity to manage her own financial affairs. My heart was beating so hard, I was sure everyone in the room could hear it. Marcus's lawyer spoke first. He stood up with confident, almost arrogant movements. Your Honor, my client is here today with a broken heart. Mrs. Eleanor Hayes is his mother, the woman he loves and respects. But in recent months, he has witnessed worrying changes in her behavior. Worrying changes. Those were his words. As if I had lost my mind for protecting my own money. Mrs. Hayes recently received a considerable sum of money, $80,000, from her sister who lives in California. This amount is more money than Mrs. Hayes has ever handled in her entire life. My client tried to offer help in managing these funds responsibly, but Mrs. Hayes flatly refused. More troubling, she has cut off communication with her son, the only close family she has in this country, based on what appear to be unfounded suspicions. Lies. It was all lies wrapped in pretty words. But they sounded convincing. I forced myself to maintain my composure, not to scream, not to stand up and tell the judge the truth right then. Furthermore, Your Honor, Mrs. Hayes lives alone in a house that is in serious disrepair. The pipes are failing, the roof leaks, there are electrical problems. It is not a safe environment for a woman her age. My client fears that without proper supervision, his mother could make decisions that jeopardize not only her money, but her own physical safety. The judge listened with an impassive expression, taking occasional notes. Do you have medical evidence of cognitive decline? Marcus's lawyer hesitated for a moment. Not formal medical evidence, Your Honor, but the erratic behavior speaks for itself. A woman who suddenly becomes suspicious of her own son, who refuses reasonable help, who isolates herself socially. These are troubling signs. I see. The judge turned to us. Mr. Warren, your turn. Arthur stood up calmly. There was something in his posture that inspired confidence. Your Honor, what we are witnessing here is not a case of a mother who needs protection. It is a case of a son who is attempting to manipulate the legal system to gain access to his mother's money, money that she is managing in a perfectly responsible manner. He pulled documents from his briefcase. I have here bank records showing that Mrs. Hayes deposited the $80,000 into a savings account in her name. She did not hide it under her mattress. She did not spend it impulsively. She put it in the bank, as any sensible person would. Furthermore, she hired a contractor with excellent references to renovate her home. She got estimates. She compared prices. She made informed decisions. Does this sound like a person incapable of managing her own affairs? The judge looked at the documents attentively. Continue. I also have written testimonials from 7 of Mrs. Hayes's neighbors, people who have known her for years, who confirm that she is an independent, capable woman of full mental faculties. Her primary care physician, Dr. Ivan Rivas, has provided a letter certifying that Mrs. Hayes is in good mental and physical health for her age. Arthur paused, letting his words sink in. What Mr. Smith has not told this court, Your Honor, is that he and his wife plan to appropriate Mrs. Hayes's money without her knowledge. My client overheard a conversation between them the night after she received the gift from her sister. A conversation in which they discussed how to divide her money between them. Half to buy an apartment, half for a trip. When Mrs. Hayes refused to give them access to the money, Mr. Smith resorted to this legal tactic as a way to force her. I saw Marcus tense up in his seat. His lawyer leaned in to whisper something in his ear. The judge was looking at both sides of the room with renewed interest. Do you have proof of this alleged conversation? The judge asked. I have my client's testimony, Your Honor, and I have a record of a subsequent phone call in which Mr. Smith admitted his true intentions. Marcus's lawyer shot up. Objection, Your Honor. There is no recording of any call. This is purely testimony without evidence. Testimony is evidence, Arthur replied calmly, and it is admissible in this court. The judge thought for a moment. I'm going to hear from Mrs. Hayes. Ma'am, please approach the stand. My legs were shaking as I stood up. I walked to the front of the room, feeling all eyes on me. I sat in the witness chair and placed my hands in my lap so no one would see them trembling. The judge looked at me with eyes that seemed to see beyond appearances. Mrs. Hayes, I want you to tell me in your own words what happened the night after your birthday. The night you say you overheard your son planning to take your money. I took a deep breath. It was around 2 a.m. I woke up because I heard voices in the living room. My son and his wife were talking. I went to the hallway and I listened. Marcus told Jasmine they could take the money, that I would never know how much the house repairs really cost. She said they could use $40,000 for the apartment they wanted to buy and another $40,000 for a trip to Europe they had planned. Marcus agreed. They decided to offer me help to manage the money, and once they had access, they would just take what they needed. And what did you do? I stayed silent. I went back to my room. And the next day I went to the bank and deposited the money in an account only in my name. Why didn't you confront your son immediately? Because I wanted to be sure. I wanted to see if he would really try it, and he did. The next day, he and Jasmine came to my house and offered me exactly what I had heard them plan, help to manage the money. The judge nodded slowly. And the phone call your lawyer mentioned? Marcus called me after he filed this legal action. He asked me to drop my opposition. I told him I knew I had overheard him that night. And then he stopped pretending. He told me that the money would be his anyway when I died, so why not use it now? He asked me how many more years I had left. 10, 15, if you're lucky, were his exact words. He offered to drop the application if I gave him $30,000, then $20,000. And when I said no, he threatened me. He told me I would end up alone and sick, and that I would regret not being more generous with him. I saw Marcus close his eyes. His lawyer was writing furiously on a legal pad. The judge was looking at me with an expression I couldn't decipher. Mrs. Hayes, those are very serious accusations. They are the truth, Your Honor. Every word. Why do you think your son would do something like this? The question hurt more than I expected. I felt tears begin to form, but I held them back. Because money matters more to him than I do. I only ever mattered to him as long as he needed something from me. My care when he was a child, my money for his education, my house when he needed a place to stay. But now that I have something that is truly mine, he believes he has the right to take it. The judge studied me for a long moment. Do you believe you are in a condition to manage your own financial affairs? Yes, Your Honor. I deposited the money in the bank the very day I decided to protect it. I hired a contractor recommended by trusted neighbors. I got detailed estimates. I consulted with friends who had done similar renovations. I made every decision with care and responsibility. I don't see what else I can do to prove I am capable. And what about your relationship with your son? Does it not worry you to lose that relationship? The tears finally fell. I couldn't stop them. It breaks my heart, Your Honor. Marcus is my only son. I love him. I will always love him. But love doesn't mean letting someone rob you. Love doesn't mean handing over your dignity in exchange for their company. If my son only wants me when I give him money, then he never really wanted me at all. The silence in the courtroom was absolute. The judge nodded slowly. You may return to your seat, Mrs. Hayes. I walked back to my spot, my legs trembling. Arthur placed his hand on mine in a gesture of support. The judge turned to Marcus's lawyer. Does your client wish to testify? The lawyer stood up. Your Honor, my client prefers not to testify at this time. I understand. The judge looked down at his notes for what felt like an eternity. I am going to take a 30-minute recess to review all the evidence presented. We will return at 11:30 for my decision. We left the courtroom. Arthur took me to a small waiting area. You did perfectly, Eleanor. Perfect. Your testimony was honest, moving, and believable. The judge believed you. I'm sure of it. And what if it's not enough? It will be enough. Trust me. The next 30 minutes were the longest of my life. Ruth had come to the courthouse to support me. She sat beside me, holding my hand, saying nothing because there were no words that could help. Just her presence was enough. When we re-entered the courtroom, the atmosphere felt different, heavier. The judge entered, and we all rose. He sat, arranged his papers, and finally looked at us all. I have carefully reviewed all the evidence presented in this case. Written testimonials, bank records, medical records, and the oral testimony of Mrs. Hayes. I have also considered the nature of the accusations made by both parties. He paused, and it felt endless. An application to declare someone legally incapable of managing their own affairs is a very serious matter. It requires clear and convincing evidence that the person in question cannot make rational decisions about their well-being and their finances. In this case, I find no such evidence. I felt my heart leap. Arthur squeezed my hand. Mrs. Hayes has not only demonstrated that she is capable of making sensible financial decisions, but she has demonstrated an uncommon level of prudence. When she received a considerable sum of money, she did not spend it impulsively. She deposited it in a secure banking institution. When she needed to hire services to repair her home, she did research, compared options, and made informed decisions. These are not the actions of an incapable person. The judge looked directly at Marcus. What concerns me deeply is Mrs. Hayes's testimony regarding the conversations she overheard and had with her son. If what she says is true, and I have no reason to doubt her testimony given that everything else she has stated has been verified as true, then this application is not a genuine attempt to protect a vulnerable mother. It is an attempt to manipulate the legal system to gain access to money that legally and morally belongs to someone else. I saw Marcus's face turn pale. His lawyer remained motionless. Therefore, I deny Mr. Smith's application to be appointed as administrator of Mrs. Hayes's assets. Furthermore, I order that Mr. Smith pay all legal costs associated with this process, including Mrs. Hayes's attorney's fees. The judge's gavel struck the desk with a sound that echoed through the room. Mrs. Hayes retains full control of all her assets and financial affairs. This case is closed. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't move. I had won. I had won. Arthur hugged me. Claire was smiling broadly. Ruth, who had been sitting in the public gallery, ran up with tears in her eyes. I looked over to where Marcus was. He was staring at me, his expression a mix of shock and fury. His lawyer was hastily gathering papers, probably anxious to get out of there. Marcus stood up slowly. For a moment, I thought he was going to approach me, that he was going to say something, but he just turned around and walked out of the courtroom without looking back. We walked out of the courthouse into the bright mid-morning Sunday. The fresh air had never tasted so sweet. You did it, Ruth said, hugging me tightly. I knew you would. Arthur was smiling with professional satisfaction. Eleanor, you just won more than a legal case. You just won back your life, your independence, and your dignity. That night, back in my house, I sat in the living room where weeks ago I had heard my son plan to rob me, the same room where it had all begun. But now it felt different. It was no longer a place of betrayal. It was my space. My home. My victory. I called Margaret. When she answered, and I told her what happened, she cried with happiness. I am so proud of you, sis. So proud. You did the right thing. You defended what was yours. I did it for you too, Margaret. That money represented years of your life. I wasn't going to let anyone steal it. That money was for you, Eleanor. It was always for you. And now you can use it exactly as we planned, to give yourself the life you deserve. After we hung up, I sat in the dark for a long time. I thought about Marcus, about where it had all gone wrong, at what point he had stopped being my son and become a stranger. But the truth was, maybe he had always been this way. Maybe I just hadn't wanted to see it. My phone rang. It was an unknown number. I hesitated before answering. Hello? Mom? It was Marcus. His voice was different. I need you to know something. We have nothing more to say to each other, Marcus. Please, just listen. You were right. About everything. I became someone I don't recognize. The money, the pressure from Jasmine, our debts, they're not excuses. I know they're not. But I want you to know that I'm sorry. I am truly sorry. The words sounded sincere. But I couldn't trust them anymore. Marcus, I hope that's true. I hope someday you find your way back to the person you should be. But I can't be part of that process. I can't risk you hurting me again. I understand. I just wanted you to know. There was a long pause. I love you, Mom. I know I didn't show it. I know I failed you in every way possible. But I love you. Tears ran down my cheeks, but my voice stayed firm. I love you too, Marcus. I will always love you. But loving someone doesn't mean letting them destroy you. Goodbye, son. I hung up the phone before he could reply. I sat in the quiet, crying for the son I had lost, or maybe for the son I had never really had. I cried for all the years of illusion, for all the times I had ignored the signs because I wanted to believe in something that didn't exist. But I also cried in relief, because I was finally free. Free from the manipulation, free from the guilt, free from pretending everything was fine when it wasn't. The following days were strange. The house felt different, quieter, but also more peaceful. Mr. Davis, the general contractor, began the renovation work exactly as we had planned. He and his team arrived early every morning, with tools and materials, with detailed plans and fair estimates. I watched them work from the kitchen, drinking my coffee, seeing my house slowly being reborn. They fixed the roof first, replacing the damaged shingles, sealing the leaks that had tormented me for years. Then came the pipes, the electrical wiring, the cracked walls. Every day brought a visible change, a tangible improvement. Ruth came to visit almost every afternoon. We would sit in the yard, drinking tea, watching the progress. Your house looks beautiful, she'd say with a smile. But you look even more beautiful. There's something different about you, Eleanor. A light you didn't have before. She was right. I felt different. For the first time in decades, I felt like my life belonged to me. I wasn't living to please anyone else. I wasn't sacrificing myself for people who didn't appreciate my sacrifices. I was living for me. Margaret called me every week to see how things were going. I want you to send me pictures of everything, she'd say enthusiastically. I want to see every detail of your new house. I sent her photos of the progress, of the freshly painted walls, of the new furniture I had bought, of the flowers I had planted in the new garden. I'm thinking of coming to visit next month, she told me on one of our calls. I want to see your finished house. I want to celebrate with you. I would love that, Margaret. This house is as much yours as it is mine. Your gift gave me more than a renovation. It gave me a new life. A month later, the work was nearly finished. The house had been completely transformed. The walls were now a soft cream color, with no damp stains or cracks. The roof was solid. The new windows let in the sunlight without the cold drafts of winter. The kitchen had new appliances, light wood cabinets, a ceramic tile floor that shone. The bathrooms had new tiles, pipes that worked perfectly, mirrors that didn't fog. But my favorite part was the living room. I had furnished it with a comfortable beige sofa, a wooden coffee table, and light curtains that let the light stream in. In one corner, I had put a small bookshelf with the books I had collected over the years. And on the main wall, I had hung a framed photo of Margaret and me, taken on my birthday, when she had given me the gift that changed everything. The day Mr. Davis and his team finished the last detail, they had a small ceremony. "Mrs. Hayes," Mr. Davis said with genuine pride in his voice, "your house is ready. I hope it's everything you dreamed of." "It's more," I said, with tears of happiness in my eyes. "It's so much more." That night, I walked through my renovated house, touching the smooth walls, admiring every corner, every detail. I had spent $62,000 in total. I still had $18,000 left in the bank, saved for emergencies or for anything I might need in the future. I had been careful. I had been prudent. I had made every decision with intelligence. And now I had a house that was truly a home. Margaret arrived a week later. When she walked through the door and saw the transformation, she was speechless. She walked through every room, touching the walls, looking out the new windows, smiling wider and wider. "Eleanor, this is incredible. It's like a completely new house." "It is," I said, "in every way." That night, we sat in the new living room with a bottle of wine. Margaret raised her glass. "To you, sis. To your courage. To your strength. For proving to yourself what I always knew you were capable of." "To you," I replied, clinking my glass against hers. "For giving me the gift that saved me. Not just the money, but the chance to discover who I really am." We talked for hours that night. About Marcus, about the betrayal, about the pain of losing a son who perhaps had never been who I thought he was. "Have you heard anything from him?" Margaret asked. "No, nothing since that last call. Sometimes I think about contacting him, but then I remember everything that happened and I realize I need to keep my distance. Maybe someday he'll change. Maybe someday he'll become the person he should be. But that's not up to me." "You did the right thing, Eleanor. Keeping the door open for someone who hurts you only invites more pain." The months passed. Spring arrived with new flowers in my garden. I had planted roses, jasmine, daisies. Every morning I woke up to the smell of flowers coming through my window. I'd drink my coffee on the small porch Mr. Davis had built, watching the sun rise over the distant hills. Ruth continued to visit me regularly. We had become even closer after everything that had happened. You know, she told me one afternoon as we were having tea in my garden, "You're an inspiration to all of us. To all the women our age who think we don't have a voice anymore, that we don't have any power. You proved that it's never too late to stand up for yourself." I don't feel like an inspiration. I just did what I had to do. Exactly. And that's what makes it so powerful. One afternoon in June, 6 months after the hearing, I was in my garden when I saw an unfamiliar car pull up in front of my house. My heart sped up for a moment, an old reflex of fear. But when I saw who got out, I was surprised. It was Jasmine. She was alone, without Marcus. She walked toward my garden gate slowly, with a cautious expression. "Eleanor, can I talk to you? Just for a moment." I hesitated. Every instinct told me to say no. But curiosity was stronger. "All right. But out here." Jasmine nodded. She stood on the other side of the low fence, not trying to come in. She looked different. Thinner, with dark circles under her eyes, without the perfect makeup and elegant clothes she always wore. She looked tired. "I came to apologize," she said bluntly. "I know I have no right. I know what Marcus and I did to you was unforgivable, but I needed you to hear it from me. I'm sorry, Eleanor. I am truly sorry." "Why now? Why after all these months?" "Because Marcus and I separated. 2 months ago. It turns out that when there's no easy money to chase, there isn't much left between us. And I've had a lot of time to think about the things I did, the people I hurt. You didn't deserve any of it." I felt no satisfaction hearing about their separation, only a distant sadness. "I appreciate your apology, Jasmine, but it doesn't change anything that happened. I know. I don't expect you to forgive me. I just needed to say it." She turned to leave, but then stopped. "Your house looks beautiful, by the way. You deserve all this beauty. You deserve all this peace." I watched her walk away and get into her car. As she drove off, I realized I didn't feel anger toward her. I didn't feel anything, really. That part of my life was over. I had closed that door and had no intention of opening it again. That night, I sat in my renovated living room, on my comfortable sofa, surrounded by the home I had built from the ashes of a betrayal. I thought about the entire journey I had taken. From that night, I heard voices in the darkness, to this moment of absolute peace. I had learned that true love does not demand constant sacrifice, that defending what is yours doesn't make you selfish, that sometimes the family you choose is stronger than the family you're born into, that it is never too late to find your voice, your strength, your dignity. I stood up and walked to the window. The full moon was illuminating my garden, making the flowers I had planted glow. This was my life now, quiet, simple, and mine. And it was enough. More than enough. It was perfect. I remembered the words Margaret had told me that night she gave me the envelope with $80,000. Make it yours again. Make it a place where you want to wake up every morning. And that was exactly what I had done. Not just with my house, but with my entire life. I went to bed that night with a peace I hadn't felt in decades. Tomorrow, I would wake up in my beautiful house, drink coffee on my porch, water my flowers. I would live each day as I wanted to live it, without manipulation, without guilt, without sacrificing my happiness for people who didn't value it. I closed my eyes and smiled in the darkness, because I had learned the most important lesson of all. Silence can be a weapon. Patience can be power. And sometimes, the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's simply living well, living in peace, living on your own terms. And that was exactly what I was going to do for the rest of my days.